YouTube video. Our YouTube viewers can now see us. What's up, YouTube?
I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna be off.
No, let's go live right now. All right, and going live. I don't see. And I think we're getting close to being live. We're super close, and I think we're just about there. What's up, fight fans? Welcome to another episode of Stoner versus Stoner. Another episode 19 to be exact. We're almost to the 20 mark, which is going to be another pivotal step for us. We're excited. When I say us, I mean me and my comrade here, my co-conspirator, my co-host, my co. Give it up for Don Stoner. Don, go ahead and give the people your credentials.
What's up, everybody? Don Stoner over here, Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Higa Machado, avid fight fan, school owner, and competitor. And yeah, man, I'm over here in the garage right now. I'm over here in the dog pound, taking care of my dogs. And hey, it's all good. We're gonna make this show happen no matter what.
And competitor, you got a competition coming up pretty soon, don't you?
Hopefully, man, if I can get it done, I'm gonna do it. We have some tournaments coming up, the Nationals, the World Championships of IBJJF, and so I'm hoping to get out there and compete and do some traditional classic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Are those some shiners I see on your face there, Don? You've been rolling hard.
Oh man, yeah. The wife, I was a bad boy.
You're rolling hard or losing sleep. You can hardly see it. The lighting is so good.
We train super hard. The past 2 weeks, we had some guys come out and just get ready for these tournaments. So we've been getting after it, man. And yeah, we've been going hard. It's pretty cool.
Nice. And you're in the middle of a weight cut too, aren't you?
Yeah, still going hard, down about 7 pounds, give or take, and just dieting, So I'm just going to diet down either if the tournaments happen or not. I'm just going to diet down and get my weight down because I need to be, I need to be like 170s or lower, optimally for for my height and everything, like back in Stug, I was 195-ish and I was cutting to 190. 185, but now I'm at 180, right? So if I can get down to 170s, 160s, it's going to be a different man. I just move a lot faster.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you're used to having that much more weight on you, there's a density factor to it where although you may not be the same weight, you still carry the same strength somehow. There's just this amazing thing that happens when you're able to drop down a weight class that you just become a big bully. Did they give you time to rehydrate and weigh back up too?
Not really. I mean, we weigh in right before the tournaments on most of the tournaments. So we'll weigh in and then we'll compete, but jiu-jitsu is like MMA in a sense where guys will cut 20, 30 pounds. And some guys will cut 10 pounds before, and then they'll just like hit a Gatorade or whatever, like in the hour, 30 minutes to an hour before you compete. So, I mean, some guys that I'll go against, are going to be cutting a lot of weight, even with the short time that we get to rehydrate. And that's what I don't want. I want to just come in fresh, hydrated,
Absolutely. And that'll really come in handy in the later matches because I'm pretty sure it's pyramid style tournament, right? Like most tournaments.
Yeah, especially the Worlds. I think there's already like 20 guys registered, so that's going to be like, I don't even know, but probably at least 5 matches.
Do they handle it in one day, or is that going to be a multi-day tournament?
That's a good question. I don't know yet. Sometimes they'll do multi-days, mm-hmm. And then other times they'll just knock the bracket out in a day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The thing is now with everything going on, they don't tell you anything until right before. Like we don't even know the pre-schedule until a week before. So I can't even book my hotel and everything until a week before the tournament.
Wow, and you better do it immediately when you find out because all those other jiu-jitsu competitors are going to be looking for the best price hotels and the best locations. So you got to beat them to the punch, so to speak.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, almost forgot to finish with the introduction. My name is Chino LaForge. My last name is not Stoner, so you can guess why we're called Stoner versus Stoner. I had to explain a little bit to one of our fans. It's because of my support for the cannabis movement and cannabis awareness and to get people out of jail for cannabis. It's such a silly thing to be in prison for. But, you know, here we are. We're talking about it. We're moving forward because we're a fight podcast after all and not talking about politics. So since it is Stoner versus Stoner, we'll be talking about what we are versing. And what we do is we take pre-fight assumptions on who we think is going to win. We give you an analysis of the fights pre-fight. We give you breakdowns of the fighters' pasts. We let you know the factors to be aware of so that if you are betting on these fights with your friends, Vegas or otherwise, you at least have some insight on the bet so you're not just looking at the odds. So let's go ahead and talk about the last event that we just had, the UFC Fight Night, Felder versus Dos Anjos, which was a bit of a late last-minute change, as well as most of the card. The main card that we had presumably bet on, about half of it didn't happen, and a couple of prelims got bumped up. So a few of our predictions didn't come to even a fight yet, but that's okay. Just before we start talking about the main card, I'd like to bring up that Ronda Marcos lost again, thus bringing her record to 10-11-1, making her a 46% fighter. Get out of the UFC! She's an eyesore for me. And it's not that she's an eyesore. She's very beautiful. But her record, her very blemished record is an eyesore in professional fighting. I think she needs to fight 10 times in Bellator before she can come back up to the UFC and give it a shot again. We need to thin out those numbers. That's just my gripe. You can feel differently. I understand if you do. What do you feel about it? 10-11.
Man, that record's pretty atrocious. I didn't see the fight, but I heard that she already has another fight booked in the UFC. So they're either trying to get her out of her contract, or they just like to see a chick with red hair scrap. I mean, she's put on some good fights, man. Don't get me wrong. I mean, she has had really good wars and some really good battles. But, you know, so is, you know, Paige Van Zandt, and so is like a lot of other girls that moved on from the UFC. So I don't know what the deal is, you know, with Ronda. And, you know, now there's always been kind of a scarcity of women in her weight class, but Invicta has brought up some good talent, especially with not Dancing with the Stars, Dana White Contender Series.
Yeah.
There's some new chicks from Invicta coming up, so maybe they'll take Ronda's spot. But 10-11, man, I mean,
you're not doing the sport any favors with that. You know, what if somebody's first UFC fight they ever watch is a Ronda Marcos fight, and they're like, is this, she has a 10-11 record? Is she like the Browns? Is she like the Miami Dolphins of fighting? You know, it's like, there's some fighter preservation that needs to happen there, where I think that she would probably, if she's still that level of talent, you know, maybe she should improve her record a little bit more. Just get it above the 50% line. That 50% line is such a ugly place for your record to be, especially if you're in the top leagues of professional fighting. It really just doesn't allot for superstar quality. It doesn't really give the fighter much room as far as improvement, because if your record's 10-11 in the prelims, you're only going to struggle more to build wins on that already tarnished record. So, you know, nobody's in this game for the participation trophy, and unless she shouldn't be happy with the record she's seeing. I'm sure of it.
I mean, if she doesn't have a quantum leap in her skills, she's going to have to go out and do like a Mike Perry or Jason Miller. She's going to have to do something crazy.
Yeah, get a tattoo on her face.
Yeah, see the UFC.
Exactly. Yeah, put some flair on it for sure. If you're gonna go down in a flaming wreck, do it like Ben Askren and talk all the crap you can on the way out. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the main card. The first fight on the main card We had talked about it was Kay Hansen and Corey McKenna. You picked Kay, I picked Corey. You were right, but you did have the intel on that fight. I'm sorry. You were not right. You were wrong. I
Yeah,
ended up winning that. I ended up winning that.
and I didn't see that fight. So if you could break that down, I need to rewatch that fight. But I was surprised. I think it was a split decision. No.
It was a split decision. There was a lot of tumbling in the fight. As far as the strikes, both fighters were somewhere around the 60% mark. So there were some great combinations thrown. I think it really came down to what happened on the ground. There was a couple of takedowns on the side of who was it? Who Kay was able to take her down, but she wasn't able to do much with it. Not a lot of effectiveness with Kay's strategy. That or Corey McKenna was really just an agile fighter. She was able to scramble out a lot. She was taken down a few times. There's a couple submission attempts that didn't really pan out. And then when it came to the feet, McKenna was able to do just a little bit more. Now, there is some controversy on this victory because if you look at the strikes, Hansen did more strikes. She didn't attempt more, but she succeeded with more, as well as had the takedowns and the submission attempts. I mean, I know I'm jumping the gun talking about this, but one of the judges did try to give the fight to Paul Felder, which, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but
That guy.
it's a bit of a stretch. Maybe he's the reason why the fight went the way it went. That's the reason I thought Kay won, because honestly, I thought she had done enough work to win the fight. But I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and rewatch that. But when you tell me there was a lot of scrambles and tumbling, it brings up a point that 10th Planet, the 10th Planet School, which Kay Hansen's a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, a lot of times they have amazing submissions and they're very good at spectacular finishes, but sometimes lack the ABCD control that you get with classic jiu-jitsu, Gracie jiu-jitsu. You know, even though they're so good at rubber guard and heel hooks and, the triangle game, they can't really, I'm not going to say they can't, but for the most part, they're not really, going to put you in half guard, pass the side control, and mount you and get you in an arm bar, and you see that with like Ben Saunders, who's a great UFC fighter, but he could never really dominate the fight like that. So, but she's young, dude. I mean, she's what, maybe 20 or something. So she's gonna come back, and she's for sure gonna do well.
It was one of those fights where the fighters were so evenly matched that they almost made each other look a little sloppy, but they weren't sloppy fighters. Just the fight became sloppy because of what they needed to do to try to edge each other out. It was a real scrappy fight. It was one that if you aren't really into the chess match of fighting, if you don't really like seeing the push and pull, the give and take, if you don't like seeing, the dance switch leaders and go for a full 15 minutes, then it might not have been your fight to watch. But if you're a fan of the strategy, if you're a fan of the movement, if you're a fan of the dance, you love that fight. After that, we had Brendan Allen and Sean Strickland. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that fight, Don? We didn't take any wagers on this one because we're right. I'm pretty sure we didn't because it wasn't a main card at first, or did we?
We did not. We did not. That's another one. I saw the clips, but if you want to go ahead and break that down, I was gonna, pick Strickland for sure on that fight. He's so active, and he's dominated a while. So yeah. I was gonna go on Strickland, but how'd that fight go?
Nothing different from what we've seen from Sean Strickland. He's really starting to make a name for himself with his fight style. Very exciting to watch, very high pressure, throws with a lot of power. When he lands, he has like that crisp snap that I like to see, you know what I mean? Just that deep thud. I mean, not the same level of power, but it kind of reminds me of Thiago Santos, the way he hits with that ground and pound, just that slap sound that it hits with, that the wrecking ball coming in fast. And he laid it on him for the first round, gave him some high pressure. And the second round was able to trap in his footwork and really locked him into a place where he wasn't able to move. I believe he caught him in mid stance adjustment, meaning he was switching back from fighting from his opposite side to try to get his footing back, and he just timed him on the back step and was able to catch him with I believe it was a left hook. I don't have the video in front of me, but it was a great shot, a surgical shot. It was well landed, well timed, and just Sean Strickland. He puts on such a heavy pace for his opponents, and for his weight class, he really does do a lot of damage. I mean, the guy's able to really lay on you. So great fight. Fight after that, we had Ashley Yoder, who was originally supposed to be in the prelims as well, versus Miranda Granger. I talked about her because I actually had seen some of her work before, and I was a big fan. And I was happy to see her pull out the victory, although that too was a very scrappy one. Did you see that fight, Don?
Yeah, I got that fight. What an interesting fight as far as position goes and as far as scrambles go. And it was really back and forth. It was really, there were some positions that you rarely see. I remember one point in the fight, Yoder got her opponent in a triangle, and the other girl, what's her name?
Miranda Granger.
Miranda sat back and trapped her legs over Yoder's body, and that's one of my favorite triangle escapes. They call it the last minute triangle escape, where you essentially, you're still stuck in the triangle, you sit back, you throw your legs over almost in a weird guard, and then they got stuck in it like two pythons trying to choke each other out. They got stuck in it for like 40 seconds, and it was just the weirdest. It was like two blonde Barbie snakes. It was so crazy, man. And they both had like dreads, and it just almost became kind of a hilarious match. I didn't know who was who at most points in the fight because they have the same look, same body type, but a lot of really good scrambles. But Yoder is so good, man. She's so good. And Granger's great too. You know, it shows that Granger's really gonna be able to have some good fights in the UFC and some good matchups by the way she performed against Yoder in that fight. She was able to get Yoder, she was able to win a lot of stand-up exchanges. She was able to defend a lot of Yoder's ground attacks. So I'm really excited to see Granger's next fight. Yoder, I thought she'd do better, to tell you the truth. I really thought she'd dominate that fight, but Yoder is almost like a Caitlin Chunigan in a way, where she has a very similar style, striking style. Maybe she's one or two steps above in the ground game of Chunigan, but they kind of fight the same. They're not devastating on the feet, but they're tactical on the ground. And so, but yeah, that fight was just, man, that was just back and forth, a bunch of crazy positions.
This is the fight I wanted to talk to you about specifically because it was such a high level of grappling in women's jiu-jitsu specifically, because, when women do jiu-jitsu, it's a slightly different sport because of the amount of leg strength, hip flexibility, the angles of attack, the types of submissions that you choose to use, the way that you lock down certain types of positions. I think we're still yet to see the development of female jiu-jitsu to a next stage, because honestly, if you look at the capabilities and the way jiu-jitsu is designed, I think we're going to see some submissions that only women can really pull, or some positions that are only really effective in women's fights. A lot of times the way to get out of mount is to oop out, or to if they already get high, to backdoor or try these things. There's a lot of women who can get S-mounted and simply throw their legs around their opponent and end up in a turtle position where they're on top all of a sudden. It's a different fight game. And once we see the development of female fighters to that next level, we're going to see the jiu-jitsu game. And this is just like that's just like a small little thing of it, where it's like when men lock up in that position, you have that last minute triangle leg lock that was pulled. That position is only held for about maybe 10, 12 seconds tops, because of like the need for flexibility and like the lack of blood flow going to your legs because of how bent you are. You know, in a women's body, they can hold that position all day. Watching women's jiu-jitsu is sometimes literally like watching cats fight, where it's just a ball that just tumbles and rolls and you can't really make sense of it. I think that makes it even more exciting is the fact that, you know, we're going to see different tricks. And that's that's the most exciting thing for me about jiu-jitsu is seeing people's individual little tricks that make it them, that make it just the thing that their opponent wasn't expecting. And we're going to be seeing a lot of that in the future of women's MMA and women's jiu-jitsu. I'm super stoked, especially when you see some of these sub-competitor females that are going to be making the switch over to UFC. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sub-competitors, you know, IBJJF competitors, which Yoder is a IBJJF champ. But, you know, it's just like jiu-jitsu in general, there's levels, right? I mean, if Mackenzie Dern was to get in that triangle, you're not going to escape the way that Grant escaped Yoder, right? But at the same time, your point as to the differences, you know, women, you know, they're more flexible, like you said, they have a stronger lower body and they have most of the time weaker upper body, unless you're talking about like Amanda Nunes or Jessica Andrade. Most of the women are going to have a stronger lower body than upper body. So you're going to see like that position that we're talking about, that triangle escape to the leg lock and those entanglements. Guys will simply, if they ever do get in that position, which they rarely will, they're going to explode out of it. So you're only going to see it for 2 seconds, where a woman's legs are going to be able to trap the upper body for a lot longer. So it's very interesting. You know, it brings up a great point. It's like, I think we're going to see some new positions. We're going to see some new exchanges, some new sequences in the game with women's jiu-jitsu. And, you know, and that's really the cool part about it. But the ladies at the highest level, Dern and them, you're not going to get those because they're at such a high level. They can finish. If they get to the point, they're going to finish you because they've drilled it 1,000 times, right, at the highest level, and they've won hundreds of matches with those moves. So it's a little different than when you see ladies that are blue, purple, and brown belt in jiu-jitsu, the scrambles that they get into. But that's a perfect example of it. And, you know, and I think that's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about too. It's like, we're going to see new positions, new scrambles out of these ladies.
Yeah. New types of angles for flying knees and high kicks. You know, that's the one that I'm looking forward to, especially is when we find these female kickboxers who've been in the game for 20, 25 plus years who retire and then start training the next batch. We're going to be seeing some really cool off angle kicks. Like that's something that I've been waiting for. I still stand firmly behind my opinion that women's MMA will be as exciting, if not more exciting, than men's MMA in 10 years, just because of structures and builds and what people find fascinating in the fight. But, you know, who knows? We're never running short on hype to ride on the coattails of, especially the hype train created on this fight that happened after that one. Abdul Razak Al-Hassan and Chaos Williams, two major knockout artists before we start this talk. Both of these guys are dynamite. Both of them are men to be feared. Both of them are fighters who you can't toe and tail with. You got to really have your A game on if you're stepping in the ring with either one of these two people. And the fight ended in 30 seconds. We were expecting it to be a slugfest. We were expecting a knockout. We're expecting a little bit more of a back and forth. But when we're talking about two knockout artists that swing with this type of power and this type of intention, I don't know why anybody's surprised that it ended in 30 seconds. A little surprised with the victor, though. Everybody thought it was going to be sorry, he's got 3 names, so it's hard to remember them all. Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. A lot of people thought it was going to be him. He was actually the betting favorite going into this fight. But Chaos does what he does. And that's his 3rd knockout within the first minute in his past 3 fights. So he's doing the same thing that Khamzat did. And he's not getting the buzz. Where's the buzz? Here's the buzz. He got his buzz. It's happening now because I'm pretty sure he got knocked out of the night with that shot. What did you see done when you saw that fight for 30 seconds?
prior to the fight, I picked Abdul. I was one of the guys that picked Abdul Razak Khan because he's also an explosive striker. And, you know, there's something about when you're named Chaos that I'm just, but it's not his fault. That's his adopted name. Good for his parents for recognizing the Chaos when they first adopted him. What an animal that he is. That's the type of fight where, man, I think if those two dudes would have fought 9 out of 10 times or whatever, they fight 10 times, 5 times one guy knocks a guy out, 5 times the other guy knocks the guy out. I'm not huge on Chaos yet, and I'm very cautious now because we're seeing so many up-and-comers having these types of fights against guys that aren't top-tier talent that we're quick to jump on the hype train. Could Chaos be the next guy? Maybe. With that knockout, he's going to have some freaking exciting fights in the UFC. Don't get me wrong. But top-tier level talent is different because, you know, they're going to look at his last fights and be like, okay, this guy's a knockout artist. I'm not going to jump into X, Y, and Z. I'm either going to circle away, I'm going to take him down, I'm going to kick his legs, I'm going to tire him out. Abdul just went in trying to go knockout for knockout, and like I said, half the time one guy's going to win, half the time the other guy's going to win in that type of fight. Mixed martial arts, I need to see a complete mixed martial artist. Hazmat's different because he showed he can not only take down and ground and pound and do a Khabib style, but he can also strike. So I'm not going to jump on Chaos next. If Chaos gets another 1 or 2 knockouts like this, then we're going to be saying Chaos Williams all day long.
Yeah, I'm not going to start the hype train for him just yet. I'm not going to give him the 2-2. 30 seconds is a very convincing win, although I don't know if it was against an opponent that's fully worth to get this train a lurching. However, he did do a great job of baiting him in. This is just a classic game of footwork in dealing with the power puncher. He really went about it the right way. What he did is he took the center of the ring immediately, he circled a little bit, and then he started to get him to chase him while he was backing up. Now, I threw a couple of feints just to see where his hands were at. He saw he had good reactions. And then he started sliding backwards. Now, you'll notice that in his footing, when he starts moving backwards, his feet take a perpendicular angle, meaning his front foot takes a forward step, it's pointed at his opponent, and his back foot takes a completely perpendicular angle on the outside over here. So it has like an L shape when you have when you look at the distance of the sugar foot as well as where he was standing. He's standing kind of like an L shape, and he's sliding that back foot back and dragging the front foot with it. So what he's doing is he's causing his opponent to move forward. Now, when your opponent's moving forward and you're moving backward, you get to choose when that momentum changes. If you're the one moving backward, you choose when the dance shifts in another direction, not the person following you, unless they choose to disengage. So now that you're leading the dance, you just wait for the timing of their step foot to be in the air just before it touches the ground. That way, you can get them to stutter step. You can't get them to angle in any direction. You can't get them to move backwards. All they can do is plant their foot and try to cover up, which is exactly what Razak tried to do there. He did a great job of changing the momentum. You'll notice that he had already had his right hand out, so he followed with the left and fired the right again when it was 3/4 cocked. But because of his footing, because he had already perpendicular angled his foot, he was able to just squash the bug, so to speak. That's the pivot, how you pivot on the foot, and angled the foot from perpendicular to pointing at his opponent to where he was firing the punch. And all that twist power from your hip comes up to the punch, push off the foot like he did. Because he was going backwards and then changing his momentum forward, he literally launched off that back foot when he twisted the bug and got all of his hip momentum moving forward with his entire body behind a cross, lights out. Yeah, that's
Michael Bisping, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm Stoner versus Stoner.
Thank you. It's an analyst of passion. I enjoyed watching.
I love talking to you, bud. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if I'm being completely
Yeah.
honest, the 1-2, of course, is the first combo you learn, and that's the way my dad told me to shoot it. Is always fight it, always throw that cross off your back foot, because when you switch your momentum like that, you double your power. And yeah, it's classic.
So do you think it was just a flash knockout, a lucky punch, or do you think that was, it sounds like what you're saying is that was really methodically set up?
It's not, to me, he took the bait. And I think that Chaos Williams probably had alternative routes to go had he not taken the bait or had his strategy not been a flash knockout. I'm sure he had a couple of other things he's going to throw his way to get his feelings in there before he went full flow. But I mean, that's a pretty standard boxing maneuver. As far as when you're fighting somebody who's super aggressive, it's a great way to bait an aggressive fighter in and to take advantage of their over-aggression or their forward movement and kind of pit it against them. You see Oscar De La Hoya use it a lot against fighters that were overly aggressive with him. It's just a classic boxing maneuver, and the way he angled his feet is what made it super efficient, because you could tell by the way he angled that back foot that he was already, in his mind, he was already ready to throw that cross. When the back foot angles like that and they're not a kickboxer, that's literally the only thing that they could be thinking, because you don't need to pivot your foot that hard to throw a hook or an uppercut. It's all cross. So if I were his opponent and I had seen that, I would start circling towards his jab hand and never let him set that power foot. If you can keep him from setting that power foot, that angling foot only becomes a turning foot, and they can't do anything with it except for maybe fire a back foot kick at you a couple times. But if you keep circling, it won't hit at the point of most power. So, I mean, you could avoid it.
Like leg kick, or what would you jab? So you'd circle with his jab hand and also jab with him? I mean, what would the counter strike be? Or would it just be circle?
To counter that jab or that cross, you would literally just be making sure that you never allow him to set it up. So you tack the front foot, throw a lot of low leg kicks from your back leg if you're standing orthodox. That way that they can't get you with the range from that cross. If you're throwing front foot leg kicks, you're leaving yourself positioned in a way that they can still get that cross and they're over. So you want to hit the leg kicks while you're circling so that you're at an angle off the shoulder, meaning that you're outside of their front shoulder. Because if you're outside the front shoulder, there's no way they're going to be able to reposition themselves to throw with the maximum power. He still might hit you with something, but it's not going to knock you out.
So
it
like
would have been
low leg kick, low calf kick, or just regular leg kick, but mainly just circle away from that power.
Yeah, but what he did is he met him head on, thinking that it was a power versus power. But he took the bait, so he was already at a slight disadvantage. And I think he was just more excited to mix it up with a fellow bruiser. And I don't think he was really thinking about what bait he might have been setting for him that early on. Because that's really early to be baiting somebody for something. You normally feel out before you start throwing your tricks out there, but he was right up there. He didn't waste any time.
What are those 85ers, man? Those guys hit like a ton of bricks, man.
Yeah. Whew. Man, that sound was sickening. And apparently his opponent was out for near 10 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. That was
kind of like a straight car crash. I know that when they were interviewing Chaos, Abdul was still laying on the ground, just dead. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, and Chaos was cool about it, man. He's like, hey, I hope he's okay. He threw him a little nod. I hope my opponent's okay. And then he kept going, you know.
Well, then and he was shouting out Jay-Z and Meek Mills in his post-fight interview. That was so funny.
Dude, that's smart. He's trying to start branding early and get some entrepreneurship in there. What better backers, too? Man, I mean, look what happened to Floyd when he went full money Mayweather and started bringing all types of people in. Boxing was alive again. Like boxing had gone through like a major death, and Floyd Mayweather brought it out of the trash because he was able to make a spectacle out of it. Now you see younger boxers doing the same thing and just raising the stakes.
Cent tried to work with Bellator too. I think he spent $1 million or more on some of the Bellator fighters. I think he was sponsoring Ryan Bader. He sponsored the fighters he shouldn't have been sponsoring, but
so happens when you don't know fighting. Yeah, he needs to talk to me before making investments. Then we can make some money. Yeah. No, but honestly, Chaos Williams is a great investment.
Yeah.
Is he a top tier talent? I think it's way too early to check. But when it comes to this, when it comes to sponsoring a fighter, giving them $500,000 at the beginning of their career is worth way more than giving them $10 million when they're already famous.
Right.
They forget the people that pay them when they're already paid. They remember the people that got them paid. That's what you're really investing in is the potential growth. So I think it's a good move. Yeah. And
now they have to do it Instagram and everything. They can't do it with the UFC. The UFC has that on lockdown. Like you cannot, whoever Jay-Z, Meek Mills cannot sponsor somebody in the UFC, but you can sponsor them on Instagram or on YouTube or on Facebook.
There's always a way to give people money for you to sell their products. You can't take that away from anybody ever. This is America, damn it. And the main event for this card, the fight that we weren't expecting, the fight that we didn't even know that we wanted to see as badly as we did, Rafael dos Anjos and Paul Felder. You went out on a limb and picked Paul Felder, which was very brave of you. And you, and as well as another judge, picked Paul Felder, which I think is incredible. The bravery on both of your parts.
I'm not related to that judge. But man, I took 2 L's on this. Both of them. You went on a limb on the first one with the girl fight, and then you ended up beating me. And then I went on a limb and I ended up losing. What the hell is going on?
I don't know. Don. Something's in the water in Washington. You might want to check your taps. No, I'm joking. But yeah, it's been a hard month to judge in fighting. There's been a lot of fights that have come across the table and gone across the table. There's been a lot of fights go the ways that we haven't been expecting it. There's been some Hail Marys. There's been some easy to predict ones. This fight, wow. I had no idea that I wanted to see RDA and Paul Felder mix it up so badly. But holy shit, did they mix it up for 5 rounds. Paul Felder looked amazing for somebody taking a fight on a 5-day notice. I can't even imagine not having a camp to fight a former champion, a potential contender, possibly 2021 champion like RDA. What's your favorite parts about the fight? Because it was a long one to break down.
Dude, I was live chatting on another podcast, my friend's podcast, Grappling Hour, and he gave us a shout out too. He's awesome, Rafa Esparza. But I went on and I told him I'm picking Felder and a bunch of other people are picking Felder just because who doesn't love Paul Felder, man? I mean, the Irish Dragon takes us on 5 days' notice, makes weight, in shape. For me, when I watched that whole fight, obviously Rafael dos Anjos should have won the fight. He did win the fight. He decisively won the fight. He won the fight using his skill sets, using takedowns. But for me, it wasn't about, wow, Paul Felder looked amazing. It was like, wow, Paul Felder's a badass for taking this. But for me, it was almost like Rafael did not look that good. And I mean, honestly, like when I looked at Rafael, like I felt like Rafael could have finished it multiple times in the fight. I feel like Rafael had chances to submit him, and maybe it was a Paul Felder was in amazing shape, but dude, 5 days notice, not training for a fight. He should have dominated Paul Felder, like by submission, decisively. It should not have went like that, and that's why when I was talking with my buds on their podcast, on their live stream, I kept saying Michael Chandler will eat them both for lunch, and they're saying, Don, why are you talking about Michael Chandler? Well, it just got in my head because I'm just looking at Rafael dos Anjos. Like, Rafael, why can't you finish Paul Felder, who's been training for a triathlon against Nate Diaz? Yeah, he probably beat Nate Diaz in a triathlon. That's great. But, dude, he's not in a fight camp at all. And you can't Now, the announcers made a good point. Maybe that helped Paul Felder that he was not in a fight camp. Maybe he was fresh and he wasn't taking the bumps and bruises that you normally take in the fight camp, but he still wasn't fight ready. Paul Felder literally fought that all in heart with his heart, and I was just flabbergasted he made it past 5 rounds. I kept saying, "There's no way he's going to make it past round 2, round 3." He kept going. Rafael wasn't using the submissions that he has, man, and that's why I was so frustrated with Rafael dos Anjos. I'm like, why can't he finish Paul Felder? He had so many opportunities, you know. I think he had his back multiple times. He had mount multiple times, side control multiple times. And then Paul Felder kept coming back in the striking. So I guess I was just mostly frustrated that Rafael couldn't finish him, to tell you the truth. Even though I wanted Paul Felder to win, I was just absolutely frustrated that Rafael couldn't finish it. Now, Rafael looked great. Don't get me wrong. In certain times of the fight, like, you know, he stood up with Paul Felder a lot of times. He had good striking exchanges. But I mean, I was just frustrated. What are your thoughts with that one?
Well, you know, I think I might have seen it from a different angle, because I hear what you're saying, and I see it too. I definitely see it. Rafael should have definitely, what you would assume would be get a good grip on an arm or something when he had position of dominance and finish the fight. I think RDA might have been trying to send a message to the rest of the division that he can also strike too. Paul Felder's a good person to relay that message, because, you know, he's known more for his hands, and when you can dominate somebody in the 3 corners of the fight, it kind of puts a bigger message out to your opponent, like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't try to stand with him, or, you know, maybe I should rethink my strategy, because maybe I'm not that much better than him in stand-up. It's Paul Felder's game. When it comes to a boxing match, he's game. And, you know, it's hard to say whether it was one of those situations where one fighter was holding back or maybe could have done better, or it was one of those situations where Paul Felder really just showed up more game than anybody was expecting, and he just made RDA's skills look a little bit lower than where they're at, because RDA had to improvise from his game plan to fight somebody that he wasn't expecting to. Because, you know, a fight camp helps. It helps immensely when you know who you're fighting. I think he would fight Islam a way different way than he would fight Paul Felder. So I think as far as the camps go, other than for health reasons, I think that they had kind of like an equal go as far as how to prepare for the fight, how to get your strategies right, and how to really get into the mindset of who you're fighting. So I think that might have been just residuals of not having an accurate fight camp for him, but who knows? You do make a good point. You would think that if you've been in a fight camp and this dude hasn't been, and he makes weight miraculously in 5 days, that you should be able to snipe this guy. But it is Paul Felder. I don't know. You make good points. It's hard to ignore those.
I mean, but do you think Islam? I mean, do you think he could honestly beat Islam with that performance?
With that performance, no. But had he been fighting Islam, I'm sure he had a different strategy than what he had lined up for Paul Felder, because that's 2 very different styles. You know, with Islam, you got to worry about striking at range. You got to worry about when you mash it up and get into a clinch, because he's dangerous there too. You know, RDA's game plan against Islam would probably be to try to get to that groundwork. But we all know that Islam's a horrible person to try to get inside of because of his length of the weight division. So with that performance, no, I don't think he would have beaten Islam. But he might have used a different game plan. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah, but it's, you know, he had to change a game plan 5 days before the fight, right? I mean, that's truth be told. Did Paul Felder show him some different looks than he was expecting? And Paul Felder was a different animal than he thought Paul Felder was going to be, most likely. But in terms of, you know, techniques and even wrestling, I mean, RDA was landing the double legs, but he's not going to take down Islam like that, man.
Right.
And he's definitely not going to put Islam away. That's for sure. So that just, you know, and I would have picked Islam either way because I've been hot on Islam Makhachev since I saw him
Oh,
back with
whatever.
DC. Yeah, DC and Anthony Johnson way back in Vegas when I saw him fight live in one of his first or second fights. I saw Islam Makhachev fight, and you know I was just like, whoa, this is like almost like a Khabib fight. Um, it's tough, man. But when I saw RDA fight like that, I was just like, it's not looking good for RDA. It really isn't. If Paul Felder was able to last that long and give RDA that tough of a fight, it just not looking good for RDA, you know. And as far as making a statement to the division, the only statement to the division is that RDA is an easier fight than a lot of people thought. I
Right.
mean, I hate to say that. He fought great, you know, but he fought very conservative against a guy who had 5 days to prepare for a fight.
I agree. I agree. No, you make great points. And is he going to crack into the top 4 of the division? No. You know, did this fight maybe propel him to the pinnacle of where he's going to go? Possibly. Possibly. He might. But because he was able to take the fight and because they kept it going, and just for keeping the volley up in the air, just to make sure that the card didn't fall apart, he might get a title challenge out of it. I mean, maybe, maybe not, but it's on the table, and it's much further than where he was before that conversation. So,
Yeah. And fans are talking about RDA versus Charles Oliveira. Dude, Oliveira all day after that fight.
it would be a good fight, though. That'd be
It
a
would
good
be a
fight.
good fight. No, it would be a good fight. And styles make fights too, right? So maybe RDA would fare better with Oliveira than he did with Felder, and for sure he'll fare better than he did with than he was going to do with Islam. But I mean, I'm actually looking below the top 5 for sure, maybe top 10.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at that last performance. But there's also cobwebs too. There's cobwebs. RDA hasn't fought in a while.
Mm-hmm. True. So we shall see. They are going to be giving RDA more fights coming up, especially after his performance. So we do have that to look forward to. Speaking of what to look forward to, UFC 255 is happening this Saturday. We've been waiting all month for it. Can you believe it? I can. The prelim fights are great. We got some early prelims that are actually really good too. I'm not going to go through and give the whole list, but we do have Antonia Shevchenko fighting. And it seems like any time we've got Valentina, we've got her sister on there as well. She'll be fighting an Ariane Lipski, who is a 13-5 fighter from Brazil as well. And Antonia is 82. So that's a pretty fair match. That should be fun to watch. Brandon Royval, one of our favorites to talk about. After his knockout victory on one of those UFC fight nights in Dubai, he's going to be coming back and fighting again in the end of the early prelims.
Who's he fighting?
End of the prelims. He's fighting Brandon Moreno.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's going to be a real good one. That's the headliner. That's the main for the prelims, the headliner prelim fight. So that's going to be a juicy one. I would say that would be the prelim to watch. I mean, there's other good ones on there. You got Alan Jobin fighting on the prelims again.
We haven't seen Alan in a long time, man. He's like he's an OG.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen him. He's on the early prelims, so make sure you tune in for the whole thing. So the main card. Okay, first of all, I want to send just a little prayer to the fight gods and just say, please don't let any of these fighters get COVID. Please don't let any of these fighters miss weight. Mike Perry, I'm looking at you, you fat ass. He was 20 pounds overweight as of 11 days before the fight. He better get that weight off. I'm going to be so mad if he doesn't. Well, what does that mean?
Though, bro.
Yeah, just to the fight gods, please let these fights happen, because if so, this is going to be a really exciting card. We got some great main events. The first fight on the main card, we have Mauricio Shogun versus Paul Craig.
Oh, again.
Mauricio Hua, Paul Craig. I'm going to pick Paul Craig in this one just because Mauricio, last time we saw him fight, we kind of saw where the speed went. We kind of saw he's still got the edge, he's still got the strength, he's still got the rally, but he really doesn't have the speed of the sting anymore. And Paul Craig's got both of those things. He's one of the faster guys of the weight class. So I think I'd give this one to Paul. Who do you think?
I'll go with Shogun. Didn't Shogun win the last one?
Yes, he did. I believe it was a 3-round decision. It was a long fight too. It was a hard one. He still got the resilience, man. He's still got the chin. He's still got that warrior spirit. But that's what I'm talking about, though. In that fight, you kind of saw a noticeable difference of speed. And Paul Craig is a fast dude. If I do remember correctly, his last fight, he edged out the victory because of how much faster he was than his opponent. So,
and Paul Craig has a good ground game.
Mm-hmm.
Shogun's fading a bit, but I'll go with Shogun. I think Shogun is better on the ground. Even though he's fading on the stand-up, I think he has enough for Paul Craig, and should be one of the last fights for Shogun. So I'm hoping that he's going to pull this out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think the UFC did a good job pairing him with somebody that's to give him a really good challenge, but maybe not give him that potentially career-ending shot, or the one that might make him talk with a slur into his 40s. He's not dealing with a heavy weight. This guy normally weighs in around 230, 240, and he's not known for throwing bombs. So it's a great way to get an older fighter who was a light heavyweight, now heavyweight, kind of get him into a less dangerous situation where he's still able to compete. So I think it's a good sign. I think it's a good fight for him. After that, we have Katlyn Chookagian. How do you say her name again? You always say it right. Chookagian. Thank you. Sorry, I'm giving it.
I think I'm saying it right. I don't know, but
we're hoping. Katlyn Chookagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. Who do you have?
That's going to be a good fight, man. Calvillo's always a gamer from Team Alpha Male. I think Chookagian's more active right now. Chookagian, I think, has enough. She's had a few holes in her game, but I think she's going to fill those holes up. I think she's going to make the adjustments. So I'll go with Chookagian on this one. That's
great, because I was going to go with Cynthia Calvillo on this one. Yeah, dude, it's a great matchup though. I think Katlyn has a really good chance of winning this fight just because, she's still chewing on sour grapes from the last one, and we all know she's a competitor and she's a great fighter, so she could really bounce back from that loss hard. But Cynthia's been on a bit of a tear. She's been having some good fights leading into this one. I believe that she did lose one though. But she looked great after it. That's really what you kind of look for. I think this is going to be an unforeseen good fight. I think there's a lot of people who are kind of counting this one out and maybe be using this fight to, check on their pizza or go to the bathroom or something. But I wouldn't do that because it's going to be a good one. That'll be a close one. Fight after that, we have Mike Perry and Tim Means. I feel like we should even bet on whether or not Mike Perry makes weight. It's like Mike Perry versus himself in the situation. Who would you want in this fight?
Man, I'll go with Means on this one.
All right. I was going to take Mike Perry. I don't know why. I don't like the guy. I'm not a big fan.
I could go either way, bro, because Mike Perry's he talks all this about how he's off weight. Is he? He talks about his corner being his girl, and everybody goes, there's no way that his girlfriend being his corner, his fiance, is going to work for him, and it does. So, you can't count Mike Perry out.
No, and he looked so good in the last fight that he had. He looked so good. It was frustrating. As somebody who watches a lot of fights and really gets behind the hardest workers and the most disciplined fighters, Mike Perry is just such a thorn in my side because he's an anomaly. He's a natural freak. He's one of those people that just doesn't need to train as hard as everybody else. Or he is, and he's just not talking about it. Either one, the latter excites me, but I don't think that's him. he's got a tattoo under his eye. He doesn't sound like the type of person that wouldn't brag about something. So.
Well, and Means too. I mean, he's kind of flown under the radar. He's kind of a guy who's very underrated in the UFC. I feel like he could have been a Bryce Mitchell, but he doesn't talk that much. The Dirty Bird Tim Means has always put on exciting fights, is very well rounded, but it's going to be dangerous for Tim Means in those striking exchanges. On the ground, I think Tim Means edges Mike Perry. Conditioning, I think Tim Means edges Mike Perry. But as far as explosive striking, it's going to be very dangerous for Tim Means in those early rounds. With Mike Perry, Mike Perry's knockout power and his striking.
Right.
Because, like you said, Mike Perry's looked really good. He's been active. Hopefully fight of the night. If that's fight of the night, man, hey, that's going to be a great fight of the night.
But that's not why. Mike Perry's the reason that this is on the main card. If this was a Tim Means fight, it would not be in the main card at 255. Mike Perry is the reason that it's in the 255. It's because he's the needle mover. You got somebody like Tim Means who, it kind of reminds me of like Leon Edwards' trajectory, where he's a very talented fighter, but he's just not getting the press. He just doesn't have a PR. Meanwhile, you have Mike Perry doing his own PR. He strikes me as the type of dude that leaves his face inside a dick pic, and he's just running amok around Florida and Vegas and doing great. I'm pretty sure he's close to the 1 million follower mark on Twitter. Guy's ridiculous. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching at the same time of disliking it, but I am watching. I am tuning in. So I'm gonna go
both, they're both. I don't want to say ex-convicts, but yeah, they both have like criminal records. They're both, and that's why I think Tim Means could have played that card, but Tim Means has been more low key on that. Like Tim Means has went through a lot of stuff Mike Perry has, but he hasn't like blasted it out. Like he's more like a changed man type dude, where Mike Perry's like embraces the crazy. And that's why we like to see Mike Perry. That's why we like to see him on Instagram, But they both have so much heart, dude, that this is going to be a bloody, bloody fight. If this goes 3 rounds, it's going to be a bloodbath. Yeah,
I agree. Neither one of these fighters are going to quit. They both know adversity very well. I don't see either one backing down. It's going to be a great fight. Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia. I'm going Valentina all the way. My bullet wife. I love her. I'm a big fan of Valentina. Very, very big fan of how she mixes it up, her footwork. Just everything about what she does in that ring is pretty damn incredible. I'm a big fan, and I'm going Shevchenko. Who are you picking in this fight, Don?
The last time I saw Shevchenko, I bet against her. The last few times I bet against her, and I said I wasn't going to bet against her, but it's the 18th day this month. I'm probably down on the scorecards, and I do like myself a Brazilian fighter. So I'm going to go with Jennifer Maia on this.
Oh, my God. I think we might be disagreeing on nearly this entire card. This is a first. I don't think we will disagree on the main event, however. But, wow. Jennifer Maia over Shevchenko? Why?
Just because I need to win at this point.
Okay, that's fair. Because I can see how Maia could win. Like, I see the tools that she has that she could enact to get the W, but I just don't see it happening.
Who was Maia's last? The last fight that I saw with Maia, I was really surprised, and I definitely picked against Maia, and she, I think, clobbered the girl, and I was like, whoa.
Let me check.
I can't remember who that was, and I think it was a top tier lady. Obviously, if she's fighting for the title, her last couple fights.
Yeah, she's
been like that.
Yeah, she's been on a tear. She her last
very
fight
well
was,
rounded. She's very.
Sorry, I think we had a little bit of internet issue there. Yeah, she is very well rounded. She's got some great skills. Her last fight was Joanne Calderwood, and she was able to put the armbar on her. Before that was Caitlin Shunigan that she lost to. That was a great fight. That was a really good fight. But before that, it was Roxanne Modafferi, Alexis Davis.
That's not looking good for Jennifer Maia when you name those names. That's not looking good for Jennifer Maia at all. But I'll still pick her.
Yeah.
Let's make it.
Yeah, but it's yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to justify, trying to play devil's advocate. I'm such a Shevchenko fan. I just don't see any daylight around that one. The girl's just a beast. She's absolutely dominated everybody that's been put in front of her, and she has no aspirations or plans of changing weight classes. She just wants to sit atop the throne as queen for as long as she's able to. And I think that is incredible, amazing, admirable. I'm with Shevchenko all the way. The final fight of that night, 255, we've got Figueiredo versus Perez.
Ooh.
I mean, it's obviously Figueiredo.
Man.
Right?
You know, Alex Perez, it is obviously Figueiredo, don't get me wrong. But when I say this, Alex Perez, though, he's been landing those low calf kicks. Chito Rivera landed it and had some upsets. Brent Primus, that's how Brent Primus beat Michael Chandler. And then Alex Perez, the same way he got this title shot was the low calf kick, and he throws it to break your leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with Figueiredo's striking, he's a very tight boxer, and he's very extremely powerful for weight class. But I feel like that's going to play into it. At the same time, Figueiredo is going to know about the low calf kick. He's going to plan for it. So he just won the title too, so he's not going to be sleeping on it. But as far as camps go, Perez has a way better camp than Figueiredo if you're talking about like high-level camps. Figueiredo is like kind of a Charles Oliveira training in his backyard in Brazil type guy.
Yeah.
But it's been working for him, obviously. Knocked out Joseph Benavidez. Knocked out who else for the title? Joseph Benavidez, that was the title shot because Henry Cejudo vacated when he retired. And so he fought Joseph Benavidez and he knocked him out, which I picked Joseph Benavidez in that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Benavidez would beat Perez. So MMA math doesn't work, but let's go with Figueiredo on this one. Let's be safe. Let's be safe.
Yeah, I see Figueiredo being a champion for at least 5 fights. He worked his ass off to get to where he is. He's from a very bad part of the world as far as like neighborhood wise. He had to fight for everything that he's ever owned. And I see him really making the most of his time reigning that division. I don't see anybody in the top 5 that's really going to convincingly take it from him just yet. So I think he's got a few victories to go before he really gets figured out on like a mathematical level. When people are like, oh, there's his hole, there's his weakness. You know, I think we're going to get a few fights out of him where people are still trying to figure him out and testing the waters. I think it won't be until somebody takes him to a 5-round fight until we really see people start to kind of pick apart the puzzle that is Figueiredo.
Well, you know, Perez beat Jussier Formiga, who just got cut from the UFC. And that was really surprising because I thought Formiga was going to be the next champion in the flyweight weight class. So Perez is no slouch by any means to beat Jussier Formiga. You know, Formiga's beat a lot of the guys at the highest level. He had a pretty good fight against Demetrius Johnson. But like you said, Figueiredo has that X factor. He's so hungry. He trains. His upbringing. He's going to be a tough guy to beat. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I think he's just so much more powerful than the other flyweights that it's going to be hard for a lot of the flyweights to crack that code, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, he's just a really tough puzzle for that weight class because you normally don't have a lot of people that are throwing bombs that are going to put you to sleep. You know, you're normally thinking about how am I going to adapt to their pace? How am I going to avoid their combinations? How am I going to get my cardio to a different level? No, with something like Figueiredo, you're going to be like, okay, back to the basics. How do I protect myself? because he is somebody that throws so much leather, so much damage, so quickly. The speed that he operates at is just dizzying. And the amount of power he's able to generate in that small amount of space is just incredible. To be able to generate that much torque at only 135, 125 pounds, like that's incredible. It's a feat of science. It's really something that we should be studying because he's got some level of mastery as far as how to generate that much torque with that little body weight. It's incredible. Wow. So we got ourselves a really good card here. We got, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many fights do we disagree on? 4 of them. So that'll be a good record to come at. That'll be a fun card to watch. I feel like for some reason, the more fights we disagree on, the more fun it is to watch the event for me.
Yeah.
But I scream at my laptop just a little bit more when I'm watching the fights when I have something on the line.
For sure. And fight fans too, please join us in that excitement because it just adds so much more to the fight because you're like, damn it.
Yeah, you have something to worry about.
I wanted to pick this underdog.
As a matter of fact, if you're one of our viewers and want to join our calls, you can always join us on our ESPN UFC Pick'ems page. I just posted the link on our Facebook page. So if you're listening or watching on Facebook, go to our page, look down a little bit, follow the link, sign in, sign up, pick your picks, see how well you do against us. And if you end up on the top of the leaderboards, we'll give you a shout out. We'll give you a mention. Make sure you change your username so you're not user 1547827 because I can't give you a shout out. I don't give shout outs to robots. But if you got yourself a display name, I'll go ahead and shout you out. Also, if you're a real fight fan, you know that Bellator is having an event tomorrow night with their main event being Darian Caldwell versus AJ McKee, at the 145 weight division. That should be a fun one. It's going to be on CBS Sports, so it'll be televised cable, so you can watch it pretty much wherever you are. If you still have cable, boomer. We also got a decent co-main event, Benson Henderson fighting at 170 against Jason Jackson. That'll be a fun one. Prelims, I don't really know much of the guys, but, you know, there's something always exciting about fighters trying to make a name for themselves. You get to see the hungry ones. Any thoughts on the Bellator card? Anything that you're excited to see?
Well, you know, we had Patricio Pitbull fight Carvalho. He knocked out Carvalho fast in the last tournament. You know, they're doing a featherweight tournament to see who's going to be the new champion of Bellator. So we've all kind of want to see AJ McKee fight against Pitbull. So, you know, AJ McKee was on an absolute tear before all this shutdown craziness happened. AJ McKee's had his whole career in Bellator completely undefeated. And, you know, we should be seeing AJ McKee in the UFC shortly. We should be seeing Patricio Pitbull in the UFC shortly. So you're looking at guys like Mike Chandler, you know, kind of in a way, you know, guys that are possibly going to cross over at a certain point and hit the big show. But until they hit the big show, they're going to have some really good fights in Bellator, you know. So I think this card's going to be really great. I'm looking for AJ McKee to dominate Caldwell. You know, Darian Caldwell, the Wolf, he was a former champion in Bellator, and he's had some great fights. But AJ McKee's, you know, AJ McKee's like the real Aaron Pico in a way. You know, everybody expected Aaron Pico to do something, but AJ McKee's really been the guy that did something in Bellator. He's undefeated. He's literally dominated everybody on his reign up to the top. So to see AJ McKee fight Patricio Pitbull is going to be really, really great. I don't think that AJ McKee is going to beat Pitbull if he does win his next fight. But again, you're seeing a high level featherweight. You're seeing guys who could be the top 5 in UFC fight, essentially. So when we talk about like the top 5 in UFC, we're talking about Max Holloway in featherweight. We're talking about Alex Volkanovski. We're talking about T-City. AJ McKee and Patricio Pitbull are there.
I wouldn't.
You know, so the type of fights that we see.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Pitbull's final fight in Bellator. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets signed by the UFC pretty soon. The UFC is making some acquisitions, especially after a lot of their fights have been falling through the cracks coming back to America. So I wouldn't be surprised. And speaking of your buddy Michael Chandler, him and Tony Ferguson have been jawing back and forth on social media. Tony Ferguson called him out saying that he wants to fight him on the December card since they're looking for a new main card fight. And Chandler saying he turned down the contract and prefers January. He wants to fight in January now. So we got Tony and we got Michael talking about that. But then at the end of the day, Michael Chandler's like, I wasn't even sent a contract yet. So regardless of what we say, it doesn't really matter. Until somebody sends me a piece of paper, nothing's materialized whatsoever. That would be a fun fight to see, wouldn't you say so?
Oh, dude, that would be such a cool fight to watch. I mean, that fight would be everything I've been waiting for. But as much as I love Michael Chandler, he cannot be a diva right now. He turned down the RDA fight, which, as we saw RDA, he should have taken that fight.
Mm-hmm.
He would have obliterated RDA. Maybe not obliterated, but I think he would have definitely won that fight. And now he's talking about, first he wanted to fight Tony Ferguson. We thought it was signed, and now he's saying, let's fight in January. Look, Michael Chandler just needs to fight Tony Ferguson when Tony Ferguson wants to fight Michael Chandler. That's the thing about, as much as I like Michael Chandler, he doesn't call the shots in the UFC. If Tony Ferguson says some weird cryptic shit on Instagram and just barely mentions Michael Chandler's name, Michael Chandler needs to say, let's do this.
Send me location. He needs to dive on that. I couldn't agree more. His apprehension doesn't read as confidence, and it doesn't read as I can take what I want. It reads a little bit as, well, I mean, I was already thinking about fighting somebody else, and that's the type of hesitation that you can't really have in the top five. When somebody like Tony Ferguson answers or gives you a call, you answer, and you say, yes, sir, how high? Until you're in a position where you're ranked higher than him. That's exactly how it should take place. So I agree. But, if Michael Chandler really is the guy, if he really is, the shit, it's to be seen in December or January, because I don't think Tony's going to let him off the hook. I think if anything, because Tony saw him squirm a little bit with the response, I think he's more excited to fight him. I think he can't wait to get his hands on him.
But at the same time, you got to, like we said, you made the comment, either Mike Chandler is the smartest guy in the UFC or Mike Chandler is a retard. I forgot how you worded that. But maybe Mike Chandler is kind of playing some mind games here with Tony Ferguson. Definitely. Like, oh yeah, I want to fight you, but let's fight on my terms. Or, maybe he's trying to say something. But one thing I know about Michael Chandler's career is he's always in shape. He's always fight ready. Even if he takes 1 week off in vacation between fights and he hasn't fought in a while. So I'm pretty sure he's in fight shape. And I think that's a very winnable fight for Michael Chandler. But it's Tony Ferguson, man. And Tony Ferguson, if Tony Ferguson is on the fights that we've seen him put on, that's going to be a tough fight. But
we also know he takes the bait on head games sometimes too, though. We also know that he is a little prone to kind of play into the head games. So who knows if Michael Chandler is playing a bit of a head game, it might be effective. It might work out for him. Let's see. Before we go, I just want to talk about one more thing. Remember how we talked about Fabricio Werdum going to Bellator? Psych! He pulled a fast one, man. So he was posting all over his social media about how excited he was to find a new home and how excited he was to get all this paperwork together to sign a contract. There's a lot of talks of them Bellator signing Fedor Emelianenko and Fabricio Werdum and finally having them a rematch. But Fabricio pulled a little bit of a pump fake and decided to go to the PFL. PFL is going to have a 2021 season, and it's going to include Fabricio Werdum in the heavyweight category. What a fake out. What a fake out. I'm stoked. What do you think about that, Don?
I think for Fabricio just pretty much thinks, you know, because it's $1 million tournament, I think he just thinks it's an easier million than what he'd make with 5 fights in the UFC or 3 fights, 4 fights in the UFC, however many times he has to fight in the UFC to make $1 million. I think he's looking at it like just an easier payday. You know, it's still going to be a war. The danger with that is there's guys in the PFL that nobody's heard of, Dagestanis that nobody knows that are dominating over there. You know, the last guy that won the heavyweight tournament, man, in PFL, I want to say it was Chase Sherman or something. But a lot of those guys are defunct UFC guys. So I think he's just looking at an easy payday. I think it's a good move for Fabricio, and it's a lot less painful fights that he'd normally have in the UFC, you know. And it's great for the PFL too. If PFL in fact is still going to put on shows, all their shows they put out until April, and how do you know that we're going to be in a different situation than we are now? Because they're not the UFC, they're not Bellator, so it's going to be hard for them to make the adjustments the way that it's a huge investment to put on fights right now. So it's interesting, right? But I think Fabricio sees an opportunity to make some money, and good for him, man.
Yeah. What a great way to utilize the star power without having to potentially pay him. You know, if he does lose the fight, he pretty much did all the heavy lifting for the PFL as far as their advertising and their star power without getting that big check. So at the same time as that it could be a potentially easy million, it can also be a big screw job. So it's a big risk with a high reward. Is it as big of a risk as we think? Maybe not. Who knows? Like you said, some of these Dagestani guys might be out there to eat his lunch, and then they did all this work for press for what? To make maybe 10 grand, 15 grand for a TV appearance, not for a fight. You know, that's not what you do it for. But yeah, it's interesting. That's something to look out for in the PFL. So anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this out, Don?
That's about it, man. We have a lot of exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to this next card, man.
Oh yeah, UFC 255 coming at you this Saturday. You got Bellator 253 happening tomorrow. Guys, thank you so much for listening to Stoner vs. Stoner. Make sure you check us out on our social media, our Facebook page. We got a YouTube channel that you can check out if you want to watch our previous episodes and see on a regularity how correct or incorrect we may be with our fight predictions. You can find me at Chino Bra. That's ChinoBrah. You can find Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Don, how can our listeners and viewers find you?
You can find me at DStoner_LWJJ or Facebook, Don Stoner.
All right. Thanks again for watching, friends. Enjoy these fights coming up. We look forward to seeing you next week. As always, enjoy the fights and aloha.